The first ground of non-frustration is commercial hardship. A contract will not be frustrated merely because it becomes more difficult or expensive to perform. In Premier Explosives Limited versus Chairman and Managing Director Singarani Collieries Limited, there was a considerable increase in the price of the raw material. The court held that a contract could not be declared to have been frustrated merely because its performance had become more onerous on account of unforeseen circumstances. The court ruled that the disappointed expectations of one of the parties to supply the material to the other did not frustrate the contract. The second ground of non-frustration is self-induced frustration. Impossibility of performance arises because none of the parties are at fault. In Maritime National Fish versus Ocean Trawlers, explaining the principle that frustration should not be self-induced, Lord Wright said that the essence of frustration is that it should not be due to the act or election of the parties. Frustration should arise without blame or fault on either side. Reliance cannot be placed on self-induced frustration. Force majeure clauses. Where there exists a force majeure clause, this will apply rather than the law of frustration. Force majeure is a common clause in contracts that essentially frees both parties from liability or obligation when an extraordinary event or circumstance beyond the control of the parties, such as war, strike, riot, crime, or an act of God, such as a hurricane, flooding, earthquake, volcanic eruption, etc., prevents one or both parties from fulfilling their obligations under the contract. Force majeure clauses do not excuse a party's non-performance entirely, but only suspends it for the duration of the force majeure. However, the clause must actually cover the event which occurred. Thus, under force majeure clauses, the parties, by specific stipulation incorporated in the contract, provide that such contingencies occurring by way of supervening events will not result in frustration of contract. Foreseeability of the event. Frustration will also not exist where the frustrating event should have been foreseen. In Walton Harvey Limited versus Walker and Humphreys Limited, a hotel owner entered a contract with an advertising agency enabling them to put illuminated advertisements on the roof of their hotel. The hotel was then compulsorily purchased by the local authority and demolished. The advertising agency sued for breach of contract, and the hotel argued that the contract had become frustrated. The court held that the contract was not frustrated as the hotel owners were aware that the local authority were looking to purchase the hotel at the time when they entered into the contract. They should have foreseen the fact that this could have happened in the lifetime of the contract and made provision in the contract for such an eventuality. They were therefore liable to pay damages for breach of contract.